The murder of a young college student baffled investigators until evidence suggested he knew his attacker. 3 tiny hairs and some microscopic skin cells uncovered a trail of lies, deceit, and retaliation. During the school year, more than 27,000 students from all over the world called the University of Missouri home.
It is largely a college town. A lot of students live here, so it's usually pretty quiet, no big crimes. There have only been about 80 to 90 murders in the past 25 years.
One of those murders occurred in June of 2004. A group of college students found a body on the grass in between 2 apartment buildings near campus.
The body was naked except for a pair of blue running shorts, and it was apparent to these college students, even from a distance, that there was a lot of blood around the neck and that the person was dead.
At first, police thought it might be an accident.
This individual could have been jumping from one rooftop to the next. Being a college town, we see all kinds of crazy things that happen here, and a stunt like that would not be out of the norm.
They actually got up, though, and looked at the roof and saw there was not blood on the edge of the roof. They looked at the air conditioner unit, saw there wasn't any blood there, and they rather quickly ruled out that idea that it would have been a fall.
But a closer inspection revealed the throat wound looked more like it was made by a knife or some other sharp object. And the blood evidence indicated the murder took place in the spot where the body was found, and not elsewhere. The victim was identified as 22-year-old Jesse Valencia, a pre-law major at the university. He worked part-time as a clerk at a local motel.
I just fell apart. I wouldn't talk to anybody, and I just sat and cried all night long and about all day.
What I know about Jesse is he was a great guy. He socialized quite a bit. He didn't have any real enemies that anyone knew of.
He was very carefree, and he had a lot of friends, and I think he really valued those friendships a lot.
But Jesse had a reputation for defending what he believed in, and he seldom backed down.
All of Jesse's friends were in agreement that he was a confrontational kind of person. He wanted to be a lawyer someday. He actually liked arguments. He was flamboyant.
Investigators learned that on the night before the murder, Jesse Valencia worked at the motel, went to a party, and then headed home.
He had been drinking that night. His blood alcohol level in his body showed he was still under the influence of alcohol at the time he was killed.
Investigators wondered why Jesse was outside in bare feet and wearing only shorts that night. Jesse lived alone in an apartment a block from where he was murdered. Investigators found the door to his apartment ajar, but there was no sign of foul play or a struggle. Under a pile of clothes, they found a possible clue: a used condom. Was it possible that the condom contained biological evidence of the killer? Jesse Valencia's autopsy provided a lot of information. Based on rigor mortis and insect activity, the medical examiner estimated Jesse was killed sometime before dawn. The murder weapon was a serrated knife that cut the arteries in his neck.
There was something unique to the blade. We were very fortunate we were able to see some of those features. For example, there was an interrupted parallel pattern that to me suggested there was something serrated about the blade.
The autopsy revealed no defensive wounds, which is unusual in a knife attack.
Usually, if someone sees someone coming at them with a knife, the hands will go up as your attacker is slashing with a knife. You're putting your hands up and you find characteristic defense wounds to the hands. There were no wounds whatsoever to the hands.
And the medical examiner found out why.
So on the surface of the windpipe, he had areas of hemorrhage that we see also when somebody is deprived of oxygen or in strangulation type deaths.
She also said she found petechiae hemorrhaging in the eyes, which is consistent with somebody being choked or somebody having compression put to their neck.
This meant that Jesse was unconscious before he was killed. DNA testing of the condom found in Jesse's apartment showed it contained biological material from two different people. One was Jesse's. The other was obviously Jesse's sexual partner, an individual police wanted to identify. Jesse's cell phone record showed he had a number of conversations with a fellow student, Ed McDevitt, on the night he was killed.
The cell phone records of both Jesse Valencia and Ed McDevitt confirmed Ed McDevitt had a phone call about 3:13 a.m. So obviously Ed McDevitt becomes one of the potential suspects.
McDevitt admitted the two had been lovers and said the last time he was intimate with Jesse was 2 nights before the murder. DNA testing confirmed that McDevitt's DNA matched the biological evidence on the condom in Jesse's apartment.
So obviously at that point, Ed McDevitt can't be ruled out as a suspect.
McDevitt insisted he didn't kill Jesse and claimed he was at home with his roommate at the time of the murder. The roommate corroborated McDevitt's claim. But evidence under Jesse's fingernails undercut that alibi.
As I started examining the shavings and clippings, I noticed that 2 fingernails appeared to have some reddish blackish stains on them.
These cells were subjected to DNA testing. The results were surprising.
I noticed that the profile from the right hand was characteristic of a mixture of possibly 3 individuals.
The first source was Jesse himself, which was expected. The second was from Ed McDevitt. He claimed this DNA, like the condom, resulted from their sexual encounter 2 nights before the murder.
Maybe this DNA was from just not washing his hands as often as he should have.
To solve the case, investigators would need to identify the source of the third DNA sample. One of Jesse's friends, Andy Schermerhorn, had information that would help.
Their relationship was a little unusual for mid-America to understand. They were friends who would sometimes have sex. They had known each other for several months and they'd had sex about 5 times, but Andy was quick to tell me we weren't boyfriends.
Andy said he was in Jesse's apartment several months earlier and witnessed a bizarre incident.
They were actually engaged in sexual activity in Jesse's bed. And a knock came to the door. Jesse got up and went to the door and opened it, and it was a police officer in uniform. The officer came in with a flashlight. He shined the flashlight around the apartment, and then he said, keep doing what you're doing. And Andy Schermerhorn said, I was standing up in bed naked, holding a sheet up, and Jesse said, no, he's cool, he's cool.
It was clear that Jesse knew the police officer and invited him to join them.
Then when it was over, he said, the officer got up real quickly, turned on a lamp, and said to Andy Schermerhorn, this has got to remain a secret. The officer went to the door, and Jesse said to the officer, when will I see you again? And And the officer made some comment, "You'll see me when you see me," or something like that. It was clear to Andy Schermerhorn that Jesse would never know when this officer would show up. And the officer left.
Needless to say, investigators wanted to know the identity of this mysterious police officer. Was it possible he had information about the murder? One of Jesse Valencia's lovers told investigators that Jesse was also involved with a police officer. Jesse's family confirmed the relationship, but Jesse never told them the officer's name.
Whenever I talked to Jesse, he would tell me that the guy was just practically stalking him. That's the word Jesse used. He said he practically stalks me everywhere I go.
Apparently, this police officer hadn't given Jesse his real name or any other information about himself.
It was like the cop wanted to know everything about Jesse, but he didn't want Jesse to know anything about him. And he would just tell him, "Oh, I just live nearby," or whatever. And that's when Jesse started getting suspicious and started telling me, he said, "You know, I'm beginning to wonder about this guy."
Andy Schermerhorn claimed he had a sexual encounter with both Jesse and the police officer. He said the man was young, in his 20s, Hispanic with dark hair, and slightly built. Investigators asked Andy to come to police headquarters to look at some photographs. As they were leading him to the conference room, something unexpected happened.
As Andy Schermerhorn was going down the hallway to look at the photographs of the person he thought was the killer, he saw the killer coming at him in the hallway. He recognized him as the person he had seen having sex with Jesse Valencia. It scared him to death.
The man was 28-year-old Steven Rios, a 3-year veteran of the department. He was known for being very ambitious.
Steven Rios seemed like he was well respected in the police force and in the community. I know he had political aspirations and he wanted something bigger. But I also think that Steven Rios was a very rigid individual, and he played everything by the rules, was very strict.
Rios was married and had just become a father for the first time. His son was only a few months old. There had never been any rumors that he was sexually involved with anyone of the same gender.
We certainly did not want to believe that Steven Rios could have been in any way involved in the murder of Jesse Valencia.
When questioned, Rios denied Schermerhorn's allegations.
The detective says, "I've talked to another boy who says he was there when you came by and he saw you having sex with Jesse Valencia." And Rios said, "What? sex? And acted real surprised.
Rios said he had an alibi for the night of the murder, that he was home in bed with his wife.
Stephen Rios told me on the phone that he would never harm Jesse Valencia, and he had nothing to do with his death.
Just to be sure, Rios provided his DNA to compare to the unidentified cells found under Jesse's fingernails. It seemed to match, but with DNA from 3 different people, it was impossible to tell conclusively.
You said that looking at the DNA of their fingernail, that there was a 1 in 7,000 chance that you would pluck any person at random off the street and that they would be a match that they could have contributed to this sample.
And even if it was Rios's DNA under Jesse's fingernails, it didn't prove murder. Ed McDevitt's DNA was under Jesse's fingernails too.
Medical science can't tell you how long DNA would stay under somebody's fingernail. You know, common sense tells you every time you wash your hands, some of it's going to go away, but you can't say with scientific certainty how long is DNA going to stay under somebody's fingernail.
Police wondered if this was the one case that forensic science wouldn't be able to solve. In the search for Jesse Valencia's killer, investigators had several suspects, all of whom had an alibi. Then investigators took one last look at Jesse's body and made a startling discovery. They found a large horizontal bruise along the victim's chest, the kind caused by a police restraint maneuver known as a shoulder pin. It's a hold in which the officer grabs the offender from behind and renders him unconscious by cutting off blood flow to the brain.
Some people go out as quickly as 5 seconds, and my personal experience working with my partner in training, he said that when he applied the technique to me and I tried to get out of it, I became unconscious in about 5 to 6 seconds.
That is, if the hold is done correctly.
When I saw the bruising on Mr. Valencia on both sides of his chest and on his back, my comment to Mr. Swingle was that could be consistent with this technique done wrong, where they were wrestling and fighting, and maybe he was getting out of it and it wasn't working.
When investigators examined Steve Rios's police training file, they made a shocking discovery. Rios took this course and failed.
What happened with Stephen Rios's scoring was he scored below an 80%, so he was not certified in the defensive tactics system.
And on Jesse's chest, about where you'd put your arm in this police hold, there was some of the victim's blood. And stuck to it were several hairs. They appeared to be from an arm or leg.
The characteristics we typically see with limb hairs are curved like features, long tapering tips, head hairs are different. They're longer. They don't necessarily taper at the end. They're often cut or rounded off at the ends.
Miraculously, 3 of the hairs contain the root, a rich source of DNA. Scientists performed a PCR DNA test on all 3 hair roots. All 3 were from the same person. The hairs weren't from Jesse Valencia or his friends, Andy Schermerhorn or Ed McDevitt.
Whenever I compared those back to the known reference standards from the individuals in this case, I was able to eliminate all individuals except for Steven Rios.
This put police officer Steven Rios' arm around Jesse's chest when he was bleeding.
He said they match to Steven Rios, and statistically, only 1 in 757.6 trillion people would match, and Rios matches.
And investigators discovered how Rios and Jesse met. Police records showed Rios cited Jesse for disorderly conduct at a loud party on campus 3 months before the murder. When confronted with the evidence, Rios changed his story. He admitted he and Jesse Valencia became lovers and said he lied to protect his family, but he continued to deny killing him.
Anybody's heart would go out to the wife of Steven Rios, because in a course of about 48 hours, she found out, number 1, her husband's having an affair. Number 2, he's having it with a man. And number 3, it's quite likely he killed this man to keep him quiet about the affair. So her life was devastated in a very short period of time.
And a closer look at Rios's activities on the night of the murder revealed a 45-minute time frame for which Rios couldn't account. And prosecutors think they know the motive. Jesse told his family he had been involved with a police officer, but just learned he was married and had a child, and he planned to end their relationship.
He thought, it's not right. If he's married, I don't want anything to do with him. And he told me he was gonna confront him, and he says, well, I am gonna forget about it. He said, I've been trying to avoid him, but he just keeps following me around.
Steven Rios was hiding it from his family and from the police force and from his friends. Jesse Valencia thought that he could maybe pretend like he was threatening Steven Rios, to tell the police about Steven Rios having this affair, to tell the police chief. But I don't think Jesse Valencia ever realized how much danger he was in.
On the night of the murder, prosecutors believe Steven Rios stopped by Jesse's apartment after his shift ended. Jesse told him the relationship was over, Rios got angry. Jesse threatened to tell Rios' superiors if he didn't leave him alone.
I don't want to have to go to your supervisor. You're gonna stay here and threaten
And
me?
then he went outside, hoping to end the confrontation. Rios didn't want the affair to end, and certainly didn't want his family or co-workers to find out. So things turned violent. Rios used a police hold to render Jesse unconscious. It worked, but it left the bruises. In the struggle, there was a DNA cross-transfer. Jesse scratched Rios and picked up skin cells. Rios left his arm hairs on Jesse's chest. When Jesse was unconscious, Rios used his knife to kill him. He left, thinking his secret was safe. It might have been, had it not been for the forensic evidence.
Jurors want to see that. They want to see fingerprints, they want to see DNA evidence, they want to see, you know, something more than just listening to witnesses talk about the evidence. They want to see objective evidence on a case.
Without a doubt, this is the worst case in our department's history. And I think any department would agree, no matter how large or how small it is, to have something like this is devastating.
The weapon used in the murder, the serrated knife, has never been recovered.
Case number 167984, State versus Rios.
Stephen Rios was tried and convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. He still maintains his innocence.
You think a police officer is someone who is hired to serve and protect the community. You never expect them to be on the opposite end and be a killer.
In this trial and closing argument, I quoted a comedy skit by the comedian Richard Pryor. And in that skit, a woman comes home unexpectedly and she catches her husband in bed with another man. And the husband looks up and says, "Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?" Stephen Rios is saying to you, 1 in 757 trillion? Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? And the jury obviously agreed with me that the scientific evidence in this case proved beyond a reasonable doubt that he was the killer.